Hello, TBL honeys. Thanks for joining me here today on IC Melanie, aka the IC Lestat channel, because we are talking everything Lestat de Lioncourt. So, of course, we've got 2 weeks until season 3 premieres, and today we have the new release of the new series called The Vampire Lestat After Dark. So I watched it a few hours ago. It was a lot of fun. Again, this is a new companion piece to the main show. So we're going to talk about that. So before we do, make sure you do those YouTube things for me. Make sure you like, you share, you subscribe, you hype, you comment. If you don't know how to hype up a video, what you do is you go to the comment section, you kind of slide it a little bit, and then there's a button that you can press that says hype. Please do that to get this video going through the YouTube algo that much more. For those of you who are new around here, thank you for joining us. We've got a great community going on here. FYI, I have not read the book, but that is okay because I'm reviewing the TV show. So we like to keep things spoiler free around here. So if you feel so compelled to leave a message, leave a comment, please don't put any book spoilers because I want the tale to seduce me on the TV screen. So thank you so much in advance for your consideration. My first impression of the show is that I really like it. Obviously, I like the concept of the show, but I also like the set. I like how it emulates a tour bus. I also like the host, Lizzie Bassett. She seems like she's really into the story, into the books, into the show. And I also overall just like the feel of it. It feels very relaxed, right? So we've got a handful of people, the main stars, and the executives who we all know are so entrenched in the show, and they all have such a great rapport. So it's nice seeing them interact. Like, it's not particularly polished. And I like that because, my videos here aren't particularly polished either. So I like how natural it feels and everyone can feel as though they can speak as freely as possible, barring spoilers, of course. But it seems like a pretty cool atmosphere over there. I am not new to the AMC companion show concept. As I mentioned before, I was a huge Walking Dead fan, a massive fan. I watched it from 2012 to the very end. And from 2012 to 2020, I used to watch The Talking Dead religiously. And so I stopped after a while because during the pandemic, they were doing it via Zoom and it just wasn't the same. And Chris Hardwick had a terrible microphone. It was really just difficult and frustrating listening to him speak with such bad audio quality. But I liked it, again, the same kind of concept, right? You've got like the main stars, you have maybe the showrunner or writers, and they give you insight into the thought process behind the show. And also on Talking Dead, which one thing I really liked as well, is that they always showed a sneak peek in that episode. So I'd always know, okay, towards the end of it, I'm going to see a scene that's going to play out in the next episode. So hopefully once we get into the regular swing of things, again, this was a preview special, but once we get into the episodic episodes, we hopefully will get some more nuggets. I also like the fact that it is only about half an hour. The runtime of this was 26 minutes versus The Talking Dead that I think sometimes they drag things out or they put little nuggets that I personally didn't find all that intriguing. I like the fact that it's just brass tacks, right? It's pretty short. We've got a few audience questions that were, emailed in or tweeted in or whatever the case is. It really gets down to the meat and potatoes of what they want to say. And yeah, I'm looking forward to watching more episodes as they come along. So let's talk about some of the details that we learned in this particular episode. Let's start off with Eric's recap of season 1 and season 2. I thought he did a really good job making things very concise. I thought it was so funny how at some points they sped up and they slowed down. And they slowed down at the end where he says, and the ultimate thing that we learned is that Armand turned me into a vampire. It's like, there are other things going on in there, Eric, that were important, but I thought that was pretty funny. I love Eric Bogosian. And I thought his description of Louis as the pretty 144-year-old vampire and Lestat as a French blonde nightmare, I thought that was perfect. And yeah, I think I might start calling Lestat the French blonde nightmare going forward because it's an apt description. One thing I learned off the top is that the bus is a double-decker bus. That's kind of a, maybe an insignificant detail. But as somebody who has seen the bus in person 2 times, I guess I wasn't really paying attention to the height of it. So I didn't actually notice it was a double-decker. And so that kind of makes some sense. And again, speaking of, thinking of that Roland cut trailer that we got the other day where we see somebody who I suspect is Daniel taking a shower in what I described as the living room open section of the bus. I guess if there are 2 layers to the bus, there's more space for, open air showers like that. So hopefully Daniel got as much privacy as he could, I guess, anticipate on that bus. I don't know why I'm talking about the plumbing on that bus, but that's where I go sometimes. And another thing I like to Sam explain, which I think we could all surmise, but it was cool to hear him say this, is that now we're going to be able to see Lestat's decision-making process and the context behind it versus the end result that was narrated by Louis. Again, not considering all things that went behind that decision-making process. So one thing, again, that I mentioned in my retrospective review of episode 6 of season 1, which will be up probably maybe a day after this is posted. So make sure you check that out. But say, for example, the idea of Claudia in the train car and him dragging her back home. So again, I do think that he did that. The decision making behind it wasn't expressly said and was made to make Lestat look like a monster, when I personally think he was dragging her home because he knew her going off to Europe, especially right when the war is popping off, was a terrible idea. So now we'll be able to see things, especially the present day things, from the omniscient point of view, our point of view. But it will help color in some of the thought process behind decisions he made, going back in the past. It might not be exactly perfect because, much like Louis, Lestat's going to have his biases. So especially when it comes to him, biases, I think. But yeah, it'll be just interesting to see the entire spectrum of everything that goes on in the mind of one Mr. Lestat de Liancourt. Roland mentioned that the writing process this year was a bit more deconstructed, a bit more twisted, but everything kind of works out in the end. And he compares it to an album, which is very fitting, of course, because there's going to be so much music this year. But he says, one track might be one sentiment, and then the next track might kind of veer off. The next one can go off on a completely different tangent, but it all kind of works out in the end. And we knew this from before, but they mentioned that Daniel Hart is now in the writer's room, or was in the writer's room. So in addition to writing the music, he was part of the writer's room, so he could hear the scripts, read the scripts, and then craft his songs to echo the sentiment of the conversation, the dialogue of the screenplay of the show. So I know it's going to be just artfully crafted. What Jacob said is also pretty interesting, and I imagine as an actor, this is kind of like a real head turner, because for the longest time, for the first 2 seasons, we were seeing things from Louis' perspective, even though his perspective wasn't 100% accurate, and sometimes Louis was just lying about things, right? But they had to play it that way, and Sam had to play Lestat in the way Louis was narrating, even though that's not the truth. And so now we're going to see things from Lestat's perspective, and now Sam is speaking his truth through the character of Lestat, and Louis is going to have to react to that. So yeah, I think for us as watchers, as viewers, it's different. But for them as actors, and especially being very close as they are, it's kind of, a bit of it's a flip, literally. So I'm sure they had a lot of fun playing those different dynamics. And speaking of which, Roland says that when we watch season 3, we'll see glimmers of things that we saw in Louis in season 1 and season 2. And as I just mentioned that, sometimes Louis wasn't always very forthcoming or honest. And so we will be able to see some of his more deceptive ways in season 3, just overtly, omnisciently. So yes, and once again, make sure you watch my retrospective review videos. I have up to 5 uploaded right now. I'll have 6 out tomorrow, and I'll have all of them up before the premiere on June 7th. That's my little project that I've been procrastinating on pretty badly, but I will have everything up by June 7th. And also Roland or Roland, I've heard his name pronounced different ways by so many people in the cast and the writers and things, so I always forget. So I might go back and forth in this, but he also mentioned that the time difference from the end of season 2 when they were hugging, he pointed out specifically to the beginning of season 3 is about 1.5 to 2 years. And in the teaser that we got at the end of February, where I did a review to it, based on some things where he mentioned, where we saw Lestat's notifications about the Beyonce concert lottery, and based on the fact that when Louis went to Louisiana to see Essence Fest, I surmised that about 2 years and about 3-4 months had passed. But we also know at the end of season 2, Louis is back in Dubai because we see him back in the house, right? In the book, he's got like the first like draft of the book. So I'd imagine a few more months went by. But in general, it's about 1.5 to 2 years difference. So a lot of things could have gone down in between then. So when a question was asked whether or not there was any moments of joy in the season, and we've heard a lot of people say this season's very dark, it's very devastating. And so Sam and Jacob say that there is an evening of joy, but they stress evening, i.e. not night, because it's very short-lived. So it might be, anywhere from the window of 6 to 9 p.m. There was a good time in that, but that's basically it. And yeah, they said something, the language they used intimated that it was the two of them together versus Lestat by himself or with somebody else. So they have said so many times how devastating this season is going to be. And again, I haven't read the books, so perhaps you guys might know this, but I also know, and they said here too, that they're integrating a lot of other books into this season. So I don't know how bad things are going to get, but I know I'm going to love it. It was so funny when they mentioned the see you next Tuesday, E. Bob. And I know some people are offended by the C word, so I'll just say the Hunty Bob. So, Lestat had the Hunty Bob in season 1. Armand had the Hunty Bob in season 2. And it might get passed on to somebody else. I can't remember right now who they said it went to, or if they even said if there was somebody who's getting it. But I'm curious to see who can carry a curly, wavy Hunty Bob. Another question was if there's going to be an Auvergne version of Nikki's stats, so Nikki and Lestat. And I got the impression that this might be a real nugget for you book readers. So I don't know if there's a story that happened in Auvergne that's more salacious or memorable than something that happened in a different area. I have no idea. So I'll just wait and see, because again, I don't want any spoilers in the comment section. There's a little bit of a crossover mention. So we see Alexandra Daddario from Mayfair Witches, and she was asking about cast members coming on, because they are getting a lot of new cast members, new actors on that show. One person who I know off the top of my head, I don't know his name, which I'll put here somewhere on the screen, but I know that he was on Game of Thrones and he was on The Haunting of Hill House, and he's a really good actor. I really like him. So I have faith that his character will be good over there, because I do watch Mayfair Witches. I don't think it's all that great, but I do know that they have a new co-showrunner, and again, they've added a whole bunch of extra actors there. But Mark Johnson mentioned that there's going to be a common thread in between all, or amongst all 3 properties, and we know Talamasca is done now. I did watch Talamasca too. And so on Talamasca, there was Raglan James, and we met Raglan in season 2. Raglan hasn't been on Mayfair Witches, so perhaps he's going to be on Mayfair Witches next season, because the only other character who's not really a huge character that has been in 2 properties is Lestat's Ratcatcher, right? So we saw him for 2 seconds on our show. We saw him for 2 seconds on Mayfair, but he wasn't on Talamasca. So I'm thinking it's Raglan, and exactly how big the relation is going to be, I guess we'll see. Also, I think another thing that book readers might find interesting that I had no idea what he was talking about. Sam mentioned that another character from one of the books is going to come, and no one's going to see that person coming, or that character coming. So obviously, we all know Akasha's coming, and she's going to be a huge deal. So that's not new to any of us. So it must be somebody else. Who that person is, I have no idea. Whether impact's going to be, I know it's going to be huge, but what exactly, I don't know. And I will continue not to know, because nobody's going to put any book spoilers in the comments section. It was also very nice to see Delaney and Assad there. So I mentioned that I met Delaney when they were filming here, and she is one of the sweetest people I've ever met. She is so nice. She is so kind. She was so friendly to me. We were talking about all sorts of things, not even related to the show. She's a real sweetheart, and I'm so glad they were able to keep her on the show, because she really is a gem, and I can't wait to watch her in that Carrie series. I've never even watched Carrie, like the movie, so maybe I'll do that, but I'll also watch it when the show comes out to see Delaney, and I hope all you guys do too. And of course, Assad was there as well. Assad, out of all the people, all the interview the Vampire Lestat people who are on that stage or on that couch and set, I have seen or met all of them, but I did not see Assad a single time in Toronto. My friends did, but I never saw him, so of course it's nice to see him. I'll jump to what he said at the end, and it's so funny because we all had the same reaction. I did, they did on set. When he said, I wrote it down, he said, Armand has always been good. It's like, in what universe? In what universe? He's never been good. But of course, Assad seems like a sweetheart, and he portrays Armand so well. And when he was talking about Armand changing Daniel and how he did it in such a fit of rage and how he just kind of lost all control. He was in control of the interview the entire time, but when things blew up in his face, he lost it and he did something despicable, something that he thought was so grotesque, changing a human into a vampire. And so when asked if there's any love between, Maker and Fledgling, Assad says there's a thin line between love and hate. So, again, I have some idea of Devil's Minion. I have a lot of friends who are huge Armand stans, and so they gave me a rundown of it. It's kind of, some things I think kind of went over my head a little bit. It seems a little confusing, but again, this is a supernatural show, so it doesn't have to make sense. And so I understand, Armand with his magical powers and what he can do. And we know in the show already that they've been in each other's lives over the span of decades. So this Devil's Minion thing kind of plays into that, and how it plays out on screen. I can't wait to see. And so that's basically everything that we saw in this preview episode of After Dark. And so I'm hoping that, with all the publicity and all the different avenues that the show is taking this year, that more eyeballs will get to see this show. And it's for the show's benefit, but it's really for the people who would watch, their benefit too, because the show is so well done, so critically acclaimed. And I've been seeing a lot of people online saying, yeah, I just started watching the show, 2 weeks ago. And how have I been sleeping on this for so long? How come nobody's really talking about it as much as they talk about other shows? Because there are tons of other shows out there that get all the glory. I'm thinking about Euphoria, which I'll be watching tonight, which I don't know why I'm still watching, but I am. I'm not hooked on it, but anyway, I won't go on about that. But yeah, shows like that aren't craftily done at all, very sloppily done, but they have all the eyeballs on it. Then you have a show like this that people kind of know about. So I hope that this helps bring it to a wider audience. So that's all I have to say about After Dark. It was lots of fun. I think this was a great table setting episode to showcase what the show is going to be about. So there's not going to be one until episode 1, so in 2 weeks. And so I'll do my review of that one there. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching ICMelanie/Lestat. Make sure you check out my retrospective reviews before the season starts in just 2 weeks. And I'll see you later, okay? Take care, guys. Bye.